Good afternoon once again. Welcome to today's class where we're going to be talking about UI design. Well, our tradition. We're just going to start by dropping one emoji to describe how our week is going so far. We'll just do that in the chat box. Okay, I see that some people are happy. I hope you guys I hope you're having a good week. Okay, so the next thing is to type out one thing you learned from the last class, or if you want to speak up, you could just raise your hand and I'm going to call you. One thing you learned from the last class. Nobody learns anything from the last class. That's very heartbreaking, as well as sad. I cannot see any raised hands or any comments. Okay, one hand. Kenny, please unmute and go ahead.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can you be more audible?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Though I came late to the last class due to some things, but the rest of the class I was able to attend. I was able to pick that we spoke about low fidelity prototype and some of the advantage of doing low fidelity prototype. And I think we spoke about ways we can do it, which is either we use paper and pencil or we do it on Figma. And also we're taught the advantage, which is it helps us to have a picture or a picture of what we want to do, and it gives us a kind of a guidelines into how we want our app to be or the websites we want to build. So these are the few things I picked, and also how we can represent whatever we want to do, probably the image, the text with various objects on Figma.
Okay. So I'm glad you learned something. Any other person? Any other person before we get started? Oh, Soji, can you unmute your mic, please? Thank you very much, Kenny. Soji, I'm seeing, okay, you said I did the process of what you said we should. This is very beautiful, honestly. Okay, this is nice. Well done. This looks very nice. It's good to
Yeah,
see that you were practicing. Well done, Soji. Okay, so what are you going to learn today? Typography, typographic design patterns and best practices. So like I said, we're going into UI design today. And I'm very sure a lot of people are looking forward to this class. We're going to be talking about color psychology, buttons, best practices for effective buttons, and then some additional reading. So let's get started. But before we go into the main thing, we have to remind ourselves, what is UI design? I know we talked about this before. So we said UI design refers to the aesthetic elements by which people interact with a product, such as buttons, icons, menu bars, typography, colors, etc. So we came to the conclusion that UI design is focused on how the product surface looks and functions. Okay, so that's that about UI design. I just hope we've not forgotten because we talked about it. First, we're going to be looking at is typography. We read a lot about typography, okay, especially those who are into graphics design. So what exactly is typography? Typography is the art of or technique of arranging written text in a legible, clear, and visually appealing manner when displayed. Okay, typography involves font style, appearance, and structure, which aims to elicit certain emotions and convey specific messages. Right? So we make use of typography almost every day. Okay. Writing out a document, even in our designs, we make use of these particular elements, UI elements every day. So these are a few elements of typography. We have font and typefaces. We're going to discuss types of typefaces. Then we have what we call leading, kerning, and tracking. We're going to be looking into that too. So the first thing here is fonts. Now, a font is a set of characters of a single size, width, and style. So for example, if you're writing out a document here and you use Roboto, right, and you set it to regular, you know we have regular, we have bold, we have light or normal, depending on the typeface you're making use of. So if you're making use of Roboto, for instance, we use Roboto, you set it to regular, and then your size is 12 points. That's a font. So you can say it comprises of a size, width, and style. So that's a font. Take note of that. Now we're going to be looking at typeface. A typeface consists of a set of similar fonts of different widths, width, and style. So in simple terms, you can say that a typeface is a family of related fonts. Okay. I don't know if you guys have heard of serif, sans serif. All of those are font families. So we can have, for example, for serif, we have one of the typefaces that belongs to that family to be, what's it called? Times New Roman. We have Laura. We have a lot of different typefaces that belong to this family. So a typeface is a family of related fonts. That's what a typeface means. Now, these are the types of typefaces. So take a look at this diagram. We have serif, we have sans serif, like I said, we have scripted fonts, and then we have the decorative fonts. So a lot of us are familiar with serif and sans serif, especially those who love to type a lot. Okay, some of us are familiar with these typefaces. So first of all, a serif, which is the first one you're seeing, is a small shape or projection that appears at the beginning or end of a stroke. Like you're seeing here, this is an example of a serif font. So that projection you're seeing there, okay, that's at the beginning or the end of a stroke on a letter. That's a serif. Now, the sans serif. Sans is actually a French word, which means without. So we could simply say that sans serif means a typeface without serifs. Do you understand? So serif has the projection, sans serif doesn't have any of that. So sans serif without the serif. Now we have what we call the scripted typeface. Script typeface comprises of fonts that appear like handwritten text. Okay, so it has fonts that are elegant and formal, or some of them are casual in style, like you can see here. It looks handwritten. And then the last thing we have here is the decorative typeface. So these ones are more diverse, and they're mostly popular for headlines. So you see these headlines in maybe newspapers or websites. Yes, websites too, where a strong typographic statement is needed. That's when we mostly make use of the decorative typefaces. So these are the types of typefaces that we have. So moving on, we're going to look at this font usage. So this class is going to be interactive. So I need your opinions on this. What do you think of the both we have two different styles here, right? Saying the same thing, anything for you, we have anything for you. So what do you think of the first and second one? Does the font change your emotion? I need answers. You can use the chat box, but I also need volunteers to raise their hands. Does the font you see on your screen, does it change your emotion? Okay, Chukudi Jonah, go ahead.
All right. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
The font on the right is actually, should I put it this way, is visually appealing compared to the other one.
Okay, thank you very much. The next person, Iachi Achon, go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, the first font looks like something out of a horror movie or a haunted movie. It's so, but the other one is more subtle as compared to the emotions that first one is evoking. So for the first one, if I see it somewhere, the first thing that comes to me is I'm pretty much going to be scared because it looks like blood dripping, and that's scary. But the second one is more subtle. So that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Your answers are very correct. So that's actually true. Imagine if you have for those of you that have lovers, right, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you receive the first writing, right, the one that looks scary, you receive that from the person. You know you're going to doubt what's written on that paper, right? Because of the way or the typeface used. Okay, so this is what we need to take into consideration, especially as designers, because whether we like it or not, typography can convey a different type of message. Okay. But if you now receive let's say we take up the anything for you. Now the first design, right? You have something like I'll find you. Okay, that's really scary. Okay. So we need to take note of these, like I said. All right, so the next thing we're going to be looking at is leading, kerning, and tracking. Now, what is leading? Leading refers to the overall letter spacing of an entire word. If you can take a look at this diagram, the first one here is tracking. Oh, sorry, tracking. Tracking is what I meant. Tracking refers to the overall letter spacing of an entire word, like you can see here. So the distance, the spacing from T to G, okay, that's what we call tracking. Now we have what we call leading. Leading here is the space between lines of text. So if you can see the arrow, the space between C and K on tracking, okay, that's leading. The space between A, D, and I in the word leading, that's what leading is. And then the last one we have here is kerning. Kerning is the space between two individual characters. So the space between K and E, or the space between N and G, is what we call kerning. All right. So take notes of that. Now we're going to be looking at what we call rags, widows, and orphans. Okay. So for small boss, I think we've read about this before. We've had these terms before, but some of us we learning about this today, which is not entirely a bad thing. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is what we call rags. Now, rags refers to the irregular or uneven vertical margin of a block of type. Okay. Now we have what we call widow. Widow occurs when the last line of a paragraph is not able to fit at the bottom of a page or column. The last one we have here is orphan. This is the exact opposite of of a widow. This happens when the first line of a paragraph sits at the bottom of a page by itself. That sounds very funny, by itself. without anybody, without a father or mother, right? So I have a diagram here that is going to do more justice to what I'm saying. Now, if you take a good look at this diagram, okay, you can see that the one on the right, okay, is more visually appealing. Okay, the paragraph on the right is more visually appealing than the one on the left. So we have bad rag and good rag. Now, I already mentioned that a rag in typography is the uneven side of a paragraph where the text is aligned on the other side. So if the text is right aligned, okay, the rag is going to be on the left side and vice versa. So if the text is left aligned, like you can see on your screen, then the rag is going to be on the right side. So a good rag is one where the lines move in and out in small increments, okay, like the one you're seeing on your right. But a not so good rag bounces the eye back and forth from line to line, okay, creating a distraction in the process, just like the one on the left. So in the two-type arrangement in the diagram above, the dramatically uneven text line edges of the layout on the left would be called a bad rag, as compared to the more even edges of the good rag on the right. So take note of this, especially when you're working on your designs. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
my hand is up actually.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, it's just concerning, well, two questions actually. But I think probably the second question I'll ask at the end of the class so that I don't take us back. But for this rag, basically what I'm seeing is one, the bad rag is like, okay, the good rag is left centered, okay? So what if it were justified? Will that still be a rag or that will not be a rag at all?
Okay, so good question. Now, you know, when you try to justify a text, there is there's a particular arrangement, or there's a particular way or style that there's a particular way it should look, right? Even, actually, not uneven. So what we're looking as as a bad rag here is any text line edge that is uneven. Do you understand? So even if you want to justify it or even make it center aligned, all of those texts that stick out, okay, and look pretty obvious. Do you understand? Because we already mentioned here that, you know, the good one is one that has small increments. So if it doesn't have small increments, that means we can classify that as a bad rag. Do you understand? No matter the alignment. Was that clear? Do you understand?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so moving on, we're going to look at widows and orphans. So widows here are short last lines of a paragraph. And if you take a good look at the diagram here, at the text on the left, you can see that one cycle, the word cycled in red, right? That can be classified as a widow. So there are short last lines of a paragraph. A widow could be one word or the end of a hyphenated word, or 2 or 3 words left alone on the last line of a paragraph, right? So what a widow does is it leaves too much white space at the end of a line, so making it look like an extra blank line. So now the wider the line and the tighter the paragraph spacing, the more distracting the widow is going to be. Okay, so it's better if you adjust your text to contain whatever 2 or 3 words. It's different if it's up to 10. Okay, it's not be that obvious. But if it's just 1 or 2, that's what makes it more distracting. Okay, and then orphans, on the other hand, are short top lines of a page. You can see now. That's why we said that orphans are opposite of widows. Okay, these ones are at the top of a page or column, right? and they are even more distracting to the reader. You can see that on the diagram we have here. So now widows and orphans have been long considered typography crimes, okay, which is as a result of laziness from the typewriter or typesetter, or even from the person who is typing out the stuff, okay? So it's born out of laziness. But today, in our world today, it is often a matter of the writer having no idea that these are even problems. So a lot of us make these mistakes without even realizing that this is a crime. This is not appealing to the eyes, okay? So now that you know, okay, you should put this into practice. Even if you're typing out a document, you're doing a design, and you're making use of, okay, you're writing a paragraph out, making use of text. So you should know better now and how to arrange your content so that you don't have rags, orphans, and widows. All right, so with that being said, we're going to be looking at color. Now, anyone that is into design needs to understand the basics of color theory, because no matter what, you're going to use color in your designs, even if you want to keep it black and white. Okay, so understanding how color works isn't just for artists who, dip their hands into paints all day. So we need to understand color and what we call color theory, color psychology as UI UX designers. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at pointers. We have color is in the beholder's eye. Now, Sir Isaac Newton established color theory in 1666. I doubt any of us were born then. That's a long time ago. So Newton understood colors as human perceptions, not basically absolute qualities or wavelengths of light. Okay, so he understood them as human perceptions. Now we have 3 types of color. For those of us who did fine arts in school, I'm sure you've heard of primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. Okay, so those are the 3 types of colors that we have. Now, you need to note that your colors must reflect your design's goal and brand personality. Okay, so your brand needs a color that you identifies with. I think I mentioned this in one of those classes. So just like we have Coca-Cola company, right? They identify with red. That's the primary color. So we need to have this brand consistency, and this is one of the reasons why I asked us to make use of the KodeCamp color when you were given the task to do the design, the poster design that had your name, your image, and the text that said proudly a KodeCamper. Okay, because KodeCamp is a brand and it has its own colors. I don't know if you guys have noticed that in all our slides, we make use of the KodeCamp colors too. You can see that the text here, the heading here, color is in the beholder's eye. That's the KodeCamp color. Okay, so your colors must reflect your design's goal and brand personality. You should also apply color theory to optimize a positive psychological impact on users, because just like typography, okay, remember when I said that typography has a way of conveying a different type of message, because at the end of the day, we're trying to convey a message to the viewers or our users, right? So you should carefully determine how the color temperature, that is the use of warm, neutral, or cool colors. Now, I would advise us to go and read on that. We have what we call cool, neutral, and cool colors. So please take note of that and read on it, right? So you need to determine the color temperature, because this is the way it reflects your message. It has this psychological impact on your users. That's what color does, even on designs. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be looking at now is another pointer. So use color theory to match what your users want to see. So now the right contrast is vital to catching users' attention in the first place. So the vibrancy you choose for your design is likewise crucial to provoking desired emotional responses from users. Okay, so how they react to color choices depend on factors such as gender, experience, age, and culture. Remember, I said, I gave an example of how I think in the Western culture, we like to say that the females, right? Females like more of pink color, or they identify with pink color. Okay, and while the men like bolder colors, right? Like you can say blue or darker colors. So color choices depend on factors such as gender, experience, age. Now, another example is if you have a daughter, right? And your daughter is maybe, let's say, 2 years, and you get her a pink bag, right? She's going to love the bag, honestly. I'm speaking from experience. When I was a kid, I loved pink a lot. Or you get her a pink bag and shoe to match. She's going to be so happy. But then if this girl grows up, okay, and let's say she's now 18 or 20 years, there's a tendency that she's not going to really appreciate that gesture, okay, of you getting her a pink bag and shoe to match, because she's grown older. So that's what we said here, that age also is a factor that affects color choices. All right, and also we have color. Now let me explain the color aspect. So for example, blue is an industry standard for banking in the West. I mean, we have Access Bank and some other bank. We have Eco Bank too. I think Keystone also is blue. Yes. So that's in the West. And you also have has some positive associations in other cultures rather. However, right, some colors can evoke contradictory feelings from certain nationalities. This is one thing we need to take into consideration. So for example, which would I even use? We have red, the red color, right? The red color represents good fortune in China. Okay, but it represents mourning, as in death, in South Africa, and danger in the United States of America. So these are all different nationalities, and all of these colors represent different things for them. So you should leverage on usability testing to confirm your color choices. So I remember somebody in one of these classes, somebody asked what happens if you're in Nigeria, for instance, and a client pays you to design a website for another country, okay, that you're not even a part of, let's say Europe, right? What would you do then? What you have to do is to conduct a usability test. So when you're performing your research, you're doing it for people over there. So that way you get insight on what color means to them, and you're able to give them what they actually want. So color is very important, and that's one thing we need to take note of as UI UX designers. Now the next thing here, through UX research, you can fine-tune color choices to resonate best with specific users. So your users will encounter your designs with their own expectations of what a design in a certain industry should look like. Now let me explain this. I think I have said this in one of those classes. Let me give you a practical example. You're walking into a shopping mall, okay, and okay, let's take a step back to when you've not gone into the shopping mall yet. Let's say you're very thirsty and your favorite soda drink is Coke. You like to drink Coke, and you just pull up into a shopping mall, and then you want to get a bottle of Coke. Now, what are you going to be looking out for? Okay, a bottle with a red cap, and then the logo. You're going to be looking out for these things. So users or viewers, right, when they see a design, they have this expectation. So just like you have the expectation of seeing a bottle with a red cap, okay, you're not looking out for a bottle with a purple cap, or maybe black. Okay, black now. It depends on the type of Coke you want to get. Let's say purple or pink. You're looking out for a red cap, right? So these are things we need to take into consideration. you cannot say you're designing for UBA, right? You want to design an application for UBA Bank, and then you're making use of purple, because if a user goes to Play Store or App Store and wants to install the UBA app, what they're looking out for, a logo, the UBA logo with red, that's the color of the brand. If I'm now seeing UBA that has pink or purple, I'm not going to even try to install or download that application, because, okay, I know that this is the bank color. Do you understand? So that's why we must also design to meet your market expectation geographically. So we need to take note of this too. This is why UX research is very, very important. Now, in the next page, I'm going to be showing you guys some colors and cultures. Now, take a good look at this. You can zoom in to see better if you're viewing this from a smaller screen. So now we have 4 cultures here, and we have different colors and what they represent to them. So I'm just going to read out a few of them. Then if you're looking at the slide later, you can actually, look at this yourself. So we have one of the cultures to be the Western culture, and we have the color red. Now for the Western culture, red represents love, danger, action. Okay, so this is for the Western culture. Now, black here represents intimidation, death, mourning. I think this is why when somebody wears black, or somebody is clad in all black on maybe a Monday morning, you're going to meet people asking questions like, who are you mourning? Why are you wearing all black? Did somebody die? Okay, because this is what black represents in the Western culture. And then we have blue. Blue represents depression. I never knew that. Represents trust and calmness. While the green, we already know. Okay, this is for the Western culture, right? So it represents luck, represents jealousy and greed for the Western culture. Now we have yellow. Yellow represents happiness, joy, caution. Now for the Far Eastern culture, red represents good fortune. I think that's supposed to mean prosperity and vitality. Okay, we have black to represent health, prosperity, and stability. We have blue to represent healing, relaxation, femininity for the Far Eastern culture. Also green represents fertility, hope, and life. Now, for the Indian culture, red represents beauty. I think that's why they have that red dot on their forehead, right? Represents beauty, wealth, and power. That's what red color represents. Okay, that's what represents in Indian culture. We have the black to represent evil, darkness, negativity. The blue to represent sports and strength. We have green to represent harvest, hope, and virtue. And then for the yellow color, it represents anything sacred and auspicious. So these are different cultures and what color these different colors means to them. Oh, he actually said the dot is for married women. I never knew that. I guess it's because I don't watch Indian movies. Okay, I think that's why they have the red dots, because actually that color means it represents beauty, and I think mostly beauty, wealth, and power to them. All right, so the next thing we're going to be looking at, okay, is what we call color psychology. Now, color psychology is the study of how certain colors impact human behavior. So like I said, different people react differently to different colors, okay? There are a lot of factors. So now, to understand color psychology in UX design, you must also consider if colors provoke emotions in people, okay, due to which their decision-making process could be affected, okay, maybe when visiting a product. That's what color psychology does. Now, we're going to be looking at some colors and how it affects us, or how it affects human behaviors. So the first color we have here is red. Now, the color red can increase a viewer's heart rate and blood pressure. Now, let's take a step back to the page, that page that had the, what's it called? Let me go back. The page that had the diagram. Yes, this. Imagine if on a Friday night, let me not say morning, you can easily run to your neighbor. Let's say by 10 p.m. West African time. Okay, you get a knock on your door, right? I watch a lot of horror movies. You get a knock on your door, and then when you open your door, you don't find anybody there, but you find this note on your floor, maybe with a knife stuck to the paper, and you see I will find you. Okay, that's really creepy. Okay, so that's why we said that the color red. Let me go back to my slide. We said the color red can increase a viewer's heart rate and blood pressure. Okay, or maybe you have a text that says you are next. You have to say prayer, don't start with that, right? Because you know that color alone is going to do a lot to you. Or maybe let's even say it's written with something that looks like blood. Okay, it could be animal blood or anything, right? So this is what this color does, or this is how it affects human behaviors. So this color is associated with passion and energy. Okay, and also most companies, some companies sometimes use the color red to express a sense of urgency. So you could find some hospitals or clinics that use this color for their brand. Now, the next color we have here is the color orange. So now the color orange is associated with playfulness, okay, along with other warm colors. Orange may express enthusiasm and other strong emotions. Okay, so this is the color orange. Now the color blue. Different tints or shades of blue have different color associations, right? We saw in the diagram that different cultures, had different meanings to this color. So light blue is typically associated with peace and gentleness, while dark blue represents power, strength, and dependability. So all of these colors have different meanings or what it is associated with. And we have the color green, Nigerian's color, green, white, green. The color green is a secondary color associated with growth and nature. Now, green has a calming presence along with other cool colors like the color purple. I think someone said, please try not to unmute your mics. Thank you very much. I think someone mentioned that the color purple is associated with royalty. I don't know how true that statement is, but so I heard. So all of these colors have different representations, like I said before. So we need to take note of these as UI UX designers, especially when we're designing, right? So there's some certain designs that you're going to do, even with graphics, that there's some certain colors that you cannot make use of. Okay, so now imagine designing a food app, and the kind of food you deal with is African dishes like afang soup, ewedu, and then you're using pink, baby pink as a primary color. Just try to imagine that, and then you now start adding pictures. You have a pink call to action button, a pink primary button, and then you now start adding pictures of soup. And the soup is like green. Try to mentally picture that. Okay, so these are things we need to put into consideration. So you do not just mix up colors because you feel like, okay, there has to be a reason, okay, a very important reason why we're making use of this color. Also considering the brand you're designing for. If you're designing for a banking application, there's some certain colors that you cannot make use of. Okay, but if you're designing for a fashion brand, you can make use of pink, or a dating app, like Tinder and all of those, they make use of pink too. But there's some applications that you cannot make use of pink color as a primary color. So these are things we need to take note of. So moving on, we're going to be discussing what we call buttons. I mean, we've seen buttons a lot. We've seen buttons. We've interacted with buttons on websites, mobile applications, and all of that, digital products, basically. So actually, my favorite UI design element is the button. Okay, you should find yours. So now, what is a button? A button is a design element that allows users to take action. Okay, buttons play an essential role in digital products because they help users to complete various actions such as confirming a purchase, uploading a file, or even closing a pop-up modal. These are all buttons and the roles that they play in digital products. Now, the design of a button should clearly convey its function. Okay, so the user understands what will happen if they select it. You cannot tell me that this button is, if I'm clicking, I'm seeing login on the button, right? I'm seeing that text, login text on the button, and then I'm clicking on login. I'm clicking on the button, and then I'm seeing something entirely different. It's taking me to somewhere that I do not even know. Do you understand? So it should clearly compare its function. A button may feature text or icon or both to communicate what it actually does. So additionally, text, images, or other design elements near the button can provide context to clarify the purpose of the button. So please take note of this. Pay attention to your screen so you don't unmute your mics by mistake. Thank you very much. Okay, so what was I saying? Yeah, we're going to be looking at button elements. Now, the first thing we're going to be looking at here is a text label. A text label describes the button's function in words. Typically, the text is a verb, such as we have continue. You can find that on a button, or a short phrase such as edit profile. Okay, so these are what we call text labels. Now we can also have an icon. An icon is a clip that symbolizes the button's function. Okay, a button can include an icon and a text, or an icon by itself. We've seen a lot of those buttons. Okay, for instance, the edit profile, or let's say add profile, or maybe let's go with the edit profile. You know, we have an icon that represents edits. Okay, we have edit icons, so you could have an edit icon close to the text that says edit profile. Okay, to help the user understand what that button actually does. All right, so the icon should adhere to commonly accepted uses, so it really aligns with users' expectations. So for example, the thumbs up icon is mostly used to indicate approval or to like something. Let's take for example, what's the application? Facebook, right? We have the thumbs up icon. We use that to like a photo or a video, or to like a post. So users, when they come on your platform or they open a digital product, they have certain expectations. Okay, so if I'm seeing that icon, for instance, the thumbs up icon, right, there's an expectation that I have. So if I now get another reaction, okay, or I now realize that I'm performing another action which is quite different from what I had in mind, then I was not the user, sorry, whoever designed that was not able to pass that information properly. So we need to take note of this too. Now, there's what we call containers. A container is a shape that encompasses the button's text, label, icon, or both. Okay, so there's a diagram here. Now, containers create visual emphasis. And what it does is allows the buttons to stand out from other elements. A container here is a solid field, okay, such as the new workspace button below in that diagram you're seeing there. Okay, it is typically easier to spot that than an outline container that has a stroke but no field, which is the edit profile buttons below. Okay, you can see that below the first one, right? Now, buttons without containers have less visual emphasis. So without a container like the first one, a text-only button may look like a link. Okay, so if you look at this diagram, you can see that. Okay, it looks like a link. However, a button helps the user complete an action, while a link opens a new page or jumps to a specific area on a page. We've opened links before. You know how somebody sends you a link on WhatsApp, it takes you to somewhere else, especially if somebody sends you a Google Doc link to take you towards your Google Chrome to open up that file, right? So now what we have in our diagram, the first one is a button with a solid hue container. The second one is a button with an outlined container. The third one is a button with no container. It's a text-only button. So we need to take note of this because we're going to be going into UI, that's our Figma board, in the next class, okay, next week. So these are things we need to take notes of. All right, so we're going to be looking at button actions one after the other. I'm sure you've heard me use this term a lot, call to action button. Are you wondering what's our call to action buttons? Now, a call to action button, depending on the situation, will usually prompt users to sign up, register, buy now, or do any of those, or take any of those actions. Now, CTA buttons should be used where the platform wants to strongly suggest something that the user should do. You can see an example here. We have sign up now. That's a call to action button. So for call to action buttons, I like to use rounded buttons. Why? Because they are eye-catching and they are striking. Okay, so I like to use rounded buttons for that. Like you can see here on the screen, this is a call to action button. Now, the second one we're going to be looking at is what we call the secondary buttons. The secondary buttons are the alternative we give users to the primary action. Okay. So I think I missed something. After the call to action, right? We're supposed to look at the primary buttons, not the secondary. So since I don't have that on my slide, let me quickly explain to you what primary buttons are. Now, they look something like what you have here, not the button that has the back, but the ones that has the text that says next. Okay, I think I forgot to add that to my slide. So now, call to action button and a primary button might look the same, but I like to separate them out. Okay, your primary button should be used in situations where the user may want to go next or complete or save, like you can see on this diagram here. Okay, so we have next. We have the field button here that says next. That's a primary button. Okay, you can see that it's different from the call to action. Now I'll explain why. And then we have the button that says save. That's the primary button too. So it usually tells the user where they should go next. Okay, so it either has a text like next, or what we have as complete. Okay. So for primary buttons, I like to use solid buttons. And the button you're seeing here is an example of a solid button. You can see that it doesn't have rounded corners like the call to action. Have you seen? There are two different styles. There are two different button styles. So now, the primary action is what users are most likely to select. Okay, or I would like to say it is the option that the product is guiding users to select. Now, primary buttons, which typically have a container with a solid feel, like the one you're seeing here, they're designed to draw the attention of the user. So generally, the user has access to one primary button at a time. You cannot put two primary buttons at a time. Either has to be a primary and a secondary, but not two primary buttons at a time. So take note of that. I'm so sorry, I missed adding that to my slide. So now we're talking about secondary buttons. Secondary buttons are the alternative we give users. You know how you ask somebody how do I put this? Okay, let's say you have a page. Maybe you were typing out something in the document, and then you click on the what's it called? The primary button. The primary button says save, but we're going to give you an alternative in case you want to edit your file or cancel. Do you understand? So the alternative that we give these users now, those are what we call the secondary action buttons, just like you can see on your screen. We have the primary button that says next, and we have the secondary button that says back. Okay. So they are less prominent. Secondary buttons are less prominent. Now, like I said before, they are the alternative we give users to the primary action. So they are given less visual emphasis, as you can see here. And it is common for a secondary button to have an outline container with no fill or no container at all. You can see that we have two types of secondary buttons here, one on the left and one on the right. So the one on the right that has edit, that's a secondary button without a container. Okay, so the user will be able to find the secondary button, but it will not be as noticeable as the primary button. So this is another thing we need to take note of as UI UX designers. Now, so these are two variations of secondary actions next to the primary ones. Lastly, we're going to be looking at the tertiary action buttons, right? Just like we have primary, we have secondary, now we have the tertiary. Tertiary action buttons are additional actions that the user may need to access. Okay, so tertiary buttons have the least visual emphasis and are often smaller than primary and secondary buttons. While they come in many styles, tertiary buttons are designed to be subtle, yet perceivable. So these are all examples of tertiary buttons. Okay, like we said, they are often smaller than the primary and secondary buttons. So if we find any button that is smaller than the primary or secondary button, there's everything that says that is a tertiary button. You can see the difference. It comes in different styles, as you can see here. The first one is with an icon. The second one is with an icon and a text. The third one is just a text. But these are all examples of tertiary actions in different formats. So take note of all three types of action buttons. Okay, or you can say button actions. Now we're going to be looking at best practices. Okay, so that when you're designing a button, you don't actually design a wrong button, or you know how to go about designing a button. Now, the first best practice here is make buttons look like buttons. Now, I'm going to ask you to look at the first and second one. So let's talk. you can actually raise your hand, or you can use the chat box. The first and second one, you can see that save for letter and publish. Those are buttons, right? Publish is like the primary button, and we have the one on the left. So these are supposed to be buttons too. But what do you think of the one on the right as compared to the one on the left? If you're seeing this, would you actually know that the one on the right is a button? Do we have anyone who wants to speak up, or you're going to use the text the comments session? Okay, so Ruben says the second looks like a comment. Ayo, please go ahead.
Yeah, the first actually looked more of a button than whatever. I don't know what the second one actually looks like.
Somebody said it looks like a signboard. Maybe you could
Looks
start
like-
with that.
Yeah, maybe it looks like a signboard, but the first one, actually, the second one is like all this verbal reasoning for kids, you know, verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning. So, but the
Okay,
first one,
right. You just took me back to primary school. Yeah, that's right. Thank you very much, Ayo. So Ayo Kunmi in the chat says the one on the right looks like a text combo. Sean says the second looks like a label. Khalid says the right side looks like a note or a notice. Exactly, it doesn't look like a button. And Irayo says the second looks like a type of design. The shadow on the first, Kendosha says the shadow on the first one gives it a 3D look, making it look like an actual button. All of you are all right, very right. Thank you very much. So yes, you have to make buttons look like buttons. Now, users know what a button is and what it looks like. I mean, a lot of us have been making use of digital products. Okay, that's why there's what we call design patterns. Okay, you cannot come out of the blue. You said you want to learn UI UX design, you want to invent your own buttons. Okay, people have already, this is how buttons should look, right? Don't try to get creative and style a button into something that doesn't look actionable to users, just like we have here on the screen. Also, we need to note that links are not buttons. Buttons are not links. Links are not buttons. But we're going to get into that a little later. So the next thing here is another best practice. Another best practice we call visually differentiate primary and secondary actions. So when you're designing a button, what you want to do is visually differentiate between a primary and a secondary action, right? So the primary action is an action that allows the user to accomplish their most common or most important goal. While the secondary actions are any actions that are less important. Now, let me show you an example in the next page. Have you seen this? So we have two types of buttons here. We have the one that says sign up and the one that says login. So the sign up here is what? The primary button, because we want the user to sign up at this particular point, at this particular moment. That's the action that we want the users to take, right? Now, the less prominent one is the secondary button, which is the login. So when the users are in doubt, the default action is the primary one. Okay, the one that is more prominent. So be sure to give prominence. Priska, please mute your mic. Thank you very much. Be sure to give prominence to the primary action button by making the secondary action appear secondary visually, just like you can see here on my screen. Okay, you can see that the first one is more prominent than the second one, and the second one looks more secondary than the first one. So these are things that we need to take note of. Okay, when designing buttons. The next thing, buttons are not links. Links are not buttons. Okay, so you can see here in this diagram, the first one is a button. Okay, this is from, everyone has a Gmail account, right? So this is from Gmail. The first button, that button there, when clicked, will initiate the action of composing a new email. We're all familiar with this, okay, with this interface, right? Now, the ones below, those are links. It's take you to different areas of your inbox, okay? Now, links do not invite the user to take action. Rather, what do? They take the user somewhere. Okay, I said they do not what? They do not invite the user to take action, but rather, what do links do? They take the user somewhere else. Okay. So links are frequently used as insights, navigation between the page of the site and outside. Now, one of the most common issues we see in a site is where a button is styled as a link or vice versa, which is totally wrong. All right. So we need to take note of this, differentiating between buttons and links, knowing when you're supposed to give the users a button to click on to take an action, and when to give them a link which will take them to somewhere else within or outside. It could be within the pages of the site or outside. Okay, like I think I gave an example of somebody sending you a Google Doc link on WhatsApp. What does that link do? It takes you to your Google Chrome where you get to open the file. So take note of that. Now, another best practice we have here, don't have more than one primary action button on the same screen at a time. Now, what you want to do is allow your users to focus on the task at hand. If you're asking them to sign up, let them sign up. Don't try to confuse them. Okay. Now, you can have more actions on the page, no wahala, but make sure that there is only one primary action. Okay, we're not saying you should not have other actions. That's why we have the option, the alternative. We have the option of the second.
I can't hear anything, ma.
Supposed to be Twitter. And then you see that sign up has the primary column, right? It is highlighted. Okay, or let's use the word field. This button is filled, like the one you can see at the top, right? And then we now see that the login is filled too. Trust me, you're going to get confused. Okay, you're going to get confused a lot. You're not going to understand what's going on, right? So that's why you need to take note of this, like I said. Okay, let them focus on one task at the hand. You're asking them to sign up. Let them do just that. Okay, so like I said earlier, users have expectation of what a single button on a page will do based on the page that they are on at the time. So if I'm on a sign up page, right, I'm expecting that the button there, the primary button that says sign up, is going to make me sign up. Okay, the action there is to what? Sign up or log in. If I'm on the login screen or on the login page, rather. So based on the page they are on, right? So if I am creating an account and I fill out the form, create an account screen usually comes in, like we have form fields for you to fill out your name, email address, and all of that. So I want to assume that the most prominent button on the page that will be used to execute the create account command is the create account button, right? That's going to be the most prominent button on that page or that screen. Now, the next thing we're going to be looking at is what I call the wording. The words that you use actually matter when you're creating your buttons. So words in buttons are meant to be clicked or tapped to execute an action. So as a UI UX designer, make sure to clearly explain what your button will do. Because once they click, most likely there's no going back. Okay, it's just like you telling the user, log in. Then I'm feeling log in. You carry me go where I don't know. Do you understand? So the wordings have to convert the message that you're trying to pass. Okay, you cannot tell them that this button says sign up. I will now lead them astray. So the words that you use, they are very important when creating your buttons. And with that being said, I hope that with these few points of mine, I've been able to convince and not confuse you as to how to create buttons and how to make use of typography and colors as a designer. All right, so we have come to the end of today's class. And as always, I put together some links here. And I really hope that we actually have time to go through this because they're very, very important. Okay. When you see this additional reading slide, it's not here for fancy. Okay. So you should take out time to read through them because it will be very helpful. There's some things that we cannot say in class, or not because we cannot, but because there is no time. Okay. So most of the times what we do here is add these links so that you can go through them and read more on what was not said in class. So Ken Joshua, yes, you did not get the slides from Monday class. We're going to send that today together with the task. All right. Yeah, so like I was saying, additional reading. We have UX design color psychology. You know, we talked about color psychology, but yes, you need to read more about color psychology. And I'm going to know people that actually open this link, not because I'm going to be monitoring you, but because when you're being given a task, maybe the next promotional task, all of these things, you're going to put them into practice. Now, the second link here is color theory. Remember we talked about color theory, learning about warm, cool, and neutral colors. Okay, so you're going to read all of that under color theory. Next thing we have here is 6 principles of visual hierarchy. Okay, the arrangement of your content, right? In the matter of importance, this is where hierarchy comes in. So you need to take note of this. So, and then rags, widows, and orphans. If you need to know more about, if you have questions concerning rags, widows, and orphans, then this is the link you need to click on to read more about rags, widows, and orphans. And with that, we've come to the end of today's class. Do we have any questions before we call it a day? Yes, you go ahead.
Okay, I remember the other time I thought you had 2 questions. So let me ask one of the questions now. So if you can please go back to your slide where you talked about tracking and tracking and leading. You
Okay,
can please go back there.
Let me do that now. Okay.
Okay, so my question is this. I get the tracking which you explained, but looking at the arrows, this horizontal arrow, going from the D to the middle of C and K, I don't kind of understand it. So if you could please go through it again, that would be nice.
Okay. Let me explain. Let me explain that. So you can see that the word tracking, right? It has more space in between it, but the word leading has lesser space. I don't even notice that. So basically, why we have that arrow pointing both is just to show you that leading here means means the space between lines of text. Okay, that's what leading means. The space between these lines of text. So that's where you can see a line under C and K, right? That's just what it means. Just like you can see the line between A, D, and I. So leading is the space between lines of text. And then while kenning is now what the space between 2 individual characters, like you can see there. And then you said you understood what tracking was. So leading, that's what leading basically means.
Okay, I get it now. Thank you.
All right. Does any other person have any other question? Chukudi says our quiz. The quiz has been postponed, okay, to further notice for now. Okay, so Ken Joshua says, is asking what kind of button is a delete button? That's a primary button. It depends. Okay, now it depends on the context, right? Depends on the context on where you're placing it. That's why we mostly have delete by the right, and then we have something like cancel, okay, on the left. So the delete button is the primary button. That, like I said, it depends on the context. Or an unfollow button. Well, I like to think that if you're having follow and unfollow, I doubt it actually comes together, right? Accept and decline. Now, we want you, whether you like it or not, when, let me put it this way. Let's say Facebook, for instance, right? We want you to accept more friends. So that's why I like to think that those are primary buttons, because this is what we want the users to do, but we're not forcing them. That's why we're giving them an alternative. Do you understand, Ken? That's why we're giving them an alternative to actually either accept, or I'm using Facebook now, something that we're more familiar with, because we have accept and decline. So we want the users to accept more friend requests, okay? But then we're giving you an alternative in case you don't want to accept, what's it called? The friend request, then you can decline. So that's an alternative. So yes, the accept button is actually a primary button, and then the unfollow could be considered a secondary button, because like I said, if we're looking at Instagram, and we have two of them placed together, that's why I said that it depends on the context, because I think on Instagram we have just one primary button at a time, which is to follow a particular person or to follow a particular profile, right? You're not going to see the unfollow button until you have followed the person. Only then will now that unfollow button be now what's activated. So like I said, it depends on the context. But if we're having two of them placed together, then the other one, especially the one on the right, because primary actions are always on the right. It is very, very important that your primary buttons are always on the right. Did you get that? Can you guys hear me? All right, thank you very much. So Annie, I already explained leading and heading for the sync time now. So maybe you have to watch the YouTube video, right? And if you have any further questions, you can still reach out to us on the Discord channel. Does any other person have a question? Any other question before we call it a day? Okay, so no question. So like I said, I'm going to drop this slide for the last class and for today's class, and also the task. Now, I know that many of us, right, we're not going to really take the non-promotional task serious, but that would be very wrong of you. Okay, so whatever task is being given, promotional or non-promotional, you need to take it serious, because that's how you're going to learn. And it's really going to tell on you in the next task, because whether you like it or not, it's a process, and you cannot skip the process. If you skip this task just because it is not promotional, there's every tendency that it is going to, that same task may appear as a promotional task later. Okay, so when you're being given this task today, just try to do it. Make out time, and if you have any questions, come on the Discord channel. There is no harm in failure, right? That's only where we get to learn better. So ask questions where you do not understand and attempt the task, so that you can actually, make corrections. All right, So in the absence of no other questions, we're going to call it a day. Thank you very much for joining in and for always joining in. Have a nice day. See you guys on the Discord channel.